Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, reacting to the Toronto Raptors 115-114 loss to the Charlotte Hornets. Riker, I think we should just get it out of the way to start the podcast. The OGEEZ play of the day. It's got to go to Jeremy Lamb's shot. Before the comment of the day or anything, that was just absolutely ridiculous.
No, that's fair to say, and you take it in a very strange way because it sucks to lose in that fashion, but obviously in a playoff game with that kind of defense to close out the final 3 seconds when you have the lead is fantastic. I mean, Pascal Siakam could not have played better defense. That's just that's a once in a lifetime kind of shot right there. So it sucks to go down, and it sucks to lose at the buzzer, especially on an almost 3/4 court shot, but that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, certainly. We can break down all of the defense and all that first, but we'll swing it, I guess, in the comment of the day. Get all the segments going.
For sure.
As we start the pod.
The comment of the day, This one, fitting for tonight's game as well. In reference to, obviously, the last game against Oklahoma City Thunder, he or she says, "What a shame. Kawhi Leonard was really good in the fourth. It's a shame that they lost to the Thunder," and you can say the same thing about tonight's matchup because Kawhi Leonard, once again, it looked like he was going to be the savior for the Toronto Raptors with a clutch shot, a clutch defensive possession, and yet they ultimately came away with the big fat L.
Yeah, certainly. Kawhi Leonard with 28 points tonight, 9 rebounds, some defensive plays, a great block on Kemba Walker down the stretch of this one, and it's just unfortunate. The Raptors fully healthy now with Kyle Lowry back. Obviously, he didn't have the greatest night tonight, still coming off that injury. Probably we all know how Kyle likes to rush back from these sorts of things. I wouldn't mind a few extra days rest for him, but Kawhi Leonard continues to bring on a night-by-night basis, and you mentioned it. At the end of this game, he had some clutch shots, and it just sucks. The Raptors shouldn't have been in that position, but the fact that Jeremy Lamb bank shot took that away from us, it was really unfortunate. But another guy, it seems like on every podcast we talk about these two players being consistently our top two guys. Pascal Siakam, 23 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. What were your thoughts about him tonight? 9 of 14 from the field.
Well, his youth showed tonight because he had a critical turnover and 5 turnovers on the night. So I think that was really a big problem. So it's good when he's scoring at a high volume and consistently he's bullying his way down underneath the basket and getting his way almost at will to the rim. And he had a really good possession late game as well where he blew past his defender and finished the layup. But at the same time, you need to have control and you need to have poise on offense when it's clutch moments and when you're in such a back and forth game. And that's when Pascal Siakam really needs to settle down, needs to work on becoming comfortable in those late game situations, because a game like this, Raptors really should have came out with the victory.
Certainly. One thing I do like about this, though, because we've seen the past couple games, because Pascal Siakam, he's made the transition from a role player to not even just a starter, a star player in the NBA, and we never really seen him he's had a couple clutch shot moments throughout the season, but the past couple games, he's really been given the ball against some decent teams, the Thunder and the Hornets, both teams are kind of fighting at the bottom of the playoff pictures in their respective conferences, but Pascal Siakam, he's kind of getting some moments down the stretch of games to really take over and be the star that he could possibly be, and obviously he's struggling with that right now. You mentioned it, the youth, the inexperience in those big moments, but I like that he's getting these kind of early bumps out of the way before the playoffs. So maybe he's got some experience, got some of this swagger, knowledge of how to execute down the stretch of games going into the playoffs when we're going to need him. Because if we can have a second star that can take the load off Kawhi down the stretch of games, that's going to be super helpful.
No, absolutely. And the Charlotte Hornets, they're still hoping to make the playoffs, so this is a much bigger game for them than it is for the Toronto Raptors. They just came off of a big victory against the Boston Celtics as well, so they're kind of cruising their way through the Eastern Conference playoff teams and trying to rally, get past the Magic, and hopefully sneak their way into the 8th seed. So we say this a lot. Hopefully, eventually, the Raptors will turn the ship around and start winning games, but it's one of those unimportant ones. But also, like you're saying about Pascal Siakam, I definitely agree. Being able to have the opportunity before playoff time to prove or to show or to attempt clutch shots is very crucial, because he's going to be able to exploit matchups at times, right? They're going to have that defensive play all over Kawhi Leonard, the names are all jumbling up here. Kawhi Leonard or Kyle Lowry. Pascal Siakam, he might get open on a switcher. He might get a mismatch, and that's when it's really good for him to take those last-second shots. I agree with what you're saying.
Certainly, and one player that's not afraid of the big moment, not afraid to take the big shots. He doesn't always hit them, but he's definitely has taken his fair share. Fred VanVleet, when the Raptors in the fourth quarter made that fourth quarter comeback, he hit some very clutch threes for this team. Obviously, he's been phenomenal since he's come back from injury. Had his worst game in the last one against Oklahoma City since the injury, but tonight bounced back, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. As I mentioned, 2 very clutch shots. I was really happy with Fred VanVleet's performance tonight.
That's it, and I'm surprised that Kyle Leonard is not there. You know what? The names Kyle Lowry. I'm not getting them tonight for some reason. You take it away on what your thoughts are. We mentioned this. We preluded it in the last 1 or 2 podcasts that we think that Kyle Lowry should be benched or on reserve minutes for a little while at least, maybe until playoff
to be healthy. Yeah, to get healthy.
To get healthy
because of yeah.
And there's no reason that Fred VanVleet can't start in the starting lineup, or Jeremy Lin takes some minutes from Kyle Lowry until he gets back to full form. So maybe you can talk about it a little bit more, but I'm surprised that they were playing him as a starter this game.
I think you have to start Kyle Lowry if he's in the lineup. He's an all-star. It might be kind of weird to not start him, but I don't mind the minutes restriction idea or just to completely rest him. But I guess he wants the games to get in his groove, and obviously we're not medical doctors, so we can't tell. But resting Kyle Lowry down the stretch is going to be key. We need everyone healthy going into the playoffs. But Fred VanVleet, he's really stepped up. And you mentioned the name Jeremy Lin. He's a player that people were debating who will be the backup point guard or the backup main swing guard. Once we picked him up off the buyout market, and there's a debate between Fred VanVleet and Jeremy Lin. I think that as we inch closer to the playoffs, that's being settled, as Jeremy Lin is only getting 6 minutes per game, or he's got 6 minutes tonight. His minutes have been slowly reducing. He struggled to shoot the ball from deep, struggled to really get his game going. Do you think Jeremy Lin will be in the playoff rotation?
I think so. I would be surprised not to see him in the playoff rotation, because if you look at the rest of the guys on the team, I talk about this enough that I don't think Norman Powell is going to be a playoff guy, and that's a guy who had a lot of minutes tonight. Right, didn't play until the second half, but I think that you can say goodbye to his minutes come playoff time and give those all to Jeremy Lin. Patrick McCaw, I think you might play him for his defensive ability, but if you need scoring, end of the day, yes, you're going to play Fred VanVleet first, but I think you're also going to put Jeremy Lin out there.
Okay, yeah, so you bring up the Norman Powell, and OGEEZ is a guy that's usually pretty, he's also an enigma off the bench as well.
But you're going to have him for his size. I think OGEEZ is definitely going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's the bigger guy out of those 4 names that are kind of on the fringe of making the rotation for the playoffs. But Norman Powell, he has, I think, the lowest lows. You could maybe have a debate with Jeremy Lin just because of his size and how he's struggled as of late. But Norman Powell, I think, brings the highest highs. And we saw a high from Norman Powell tonight. Obviously, didn't play in the first half. The second half got out there. His first 6 minutes run 10 points. He had a great 11 rebound game last game. Unfortunately, wasn't able to score the ball, but he's coming out. It's looking like Norm is motivated. So it's gonna be tough to really cut these guys' minutes down, and I want to see a firm rotation as we go towards the playoffs. Nick Nurse mentioned how he wants to play 2 starters with the bench on a consistent basis, just so everyone gets the familiarity and all that. And we saw some different lineups tonight. Obviously, we ended with the lineup with Pascal at center.
Let me hit you with a question, though, Ben. Let me hit you with a hot take or a question, however you may be. Respond to this. Norman Powell, out of everybody on the bench, needs to do considerably better than anyone else in order to play minutes. So if OG Anunoby goes out and gets 6 points, I would say that Norman Powell would need to go out there and get 15 points. Would you agree or disagree with that? In order for Nick Nurse to want to play him come playoff time.
In order for him to deserve it?
Not to deserve... Okay. In Nick Nurse's eyes.
I think Norman Powell, just because of how he's fluctuated throughout the stretch of seasons, I think if he just plays consistent, because...
Yeah, but there's only 8 games left. So it's rough to say you're going to be able to really show consistency in 7-8 games, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what I think. Respond in a sec. This is what I think, is that you've seen enough from OG, you've seen enough from Patrick McCaw. I'd say if over the next 7 games, you see Patrick McCaw get 8 points per game, only 8, you're going to see him become a lock come playoff time. But if you see Norman Powell only get 6 to 8 points per game for the next 7 to 8 games, I think you're not going to see him play.
I don't know. I disagree, just because of how Norm has elevated his game in the playoffs. And Patrick McCaw, he's not going to average 8 points per game. We've seen him on a night-by-night basis. He's consistent, but, it's only the rare times we see him score over 10. It's most games he's getting around, he had 2 tonight. In 11 minutes, he was a minus 17
he was the worst
on
player
the court.
on the team this game.
So, Patrick McCaw, although I think Patrick McCaw's game is going to be very intriguing going forward if he stays on the Raptors roster, I'm a Norman Powell guy. Obviously, I'm biased. People that listen to the pod know I'm a Norm God supporter, but I think Norm is going to be in the playoff rotation over Lynn, over McCaw. I don't necessarily think OG, but if I had to pick 2 out of those 4 guys, it's going to be Norm and OG for me.
All right, that's an interesting take. Maybe we can finish it off with the segments and let people sound off if they've listened this far. Do you agree? Do you think Norman Powell is actually going to crack the rotation? I'm really swaying hard to no. Ben is thinking yes. Let us know what you think. But Ben, I'm sure there's a couple segments that we haven't touched on yet. If you want to take us away.
Certainly, the Kawhi, you do him like that play of the day. It's got to go to Kawhi himself hitting that clutch shot, and then the block on Kemba Walker down the stretch. Unfortunately, it was nullified by the OGEEZ that we initially started this podcast with. Jeremy Lamb hitting that ridiculous shot to make Kawhi Leonard's nice, actual clutch plays performance. I guess, the Jeremy Lamb shot was clutch, even though it was fluky. So that was unfortunate, but certainly a Kawhi do him like that from Kawhi. And finally, the infamous, the one and only Damari Carroll Gold Star Award. And we brought him up earlier, Patrick McCaw. That's the Damari Carroll Gold Star Award for me. Jeremy Lin didn't get enough minutes to warrant it, even though he had 0 points. It was a -8 in 6 minutes. Do you have any in mind there, Riker?
No, Jeremy Lin still, just on those numbers alone, played better. Because if you double his minutes, -16 in 12 minutes. Patrick McCaw, -17 in 11 minutes. So he was the worst player by far out there on the court tonight. Need to do better than that, my man.
Certainly. And before we end it off, I know we're running. We have a quick pod here tonight, but Marc Gasol, he had probably one of his better games as the Raptor. Didn't get too many minutes, only 23 minutes, but 17 points,
he heard you, Ben.
6 assists, 4 rebounds. Yeah, no, he's he needs to be more aggressive. He needs to be more aggressive with the shot, and he was that tonight. He took 9. I wouldn't even mind to see him shoot a bit more. Obviously, he didn't get much run. Serge Ibaka, he had 18 minutes. The center position didn't get too much run tonight. Serge had 10 and 1. Are we in agreement that Gasol should be the remaining starting center for the rest of the year?
Depends on matchups.
Depends on matchups?
In a 76ers matchup, you want him. In a Boston Celtics matchup, I'd say put Ibaka at the starting center position.
Fair enough. Yeah. We have a lot of discussion to go on, as we inch closer to the playoffs. So subscribe to the Raptors Digest. More content's coming soon in terms of segments and playoff build-up. So we appreciate you guys if you made it this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. Any last words, Riker?
That's it for me. We're hoping for a W next game.
Certainly. And Bismack Biyombo got the start from the Hornets, so future Raptor. I'm counting on Bismack Biyombo coming to the Raptors in the next couple of years.
Get him on How Hungry Are You? And then he's a lock-in to come back.
Facts.
All right.
Anyways.
Cheers.